Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Breakdown. It's March 5th, 2023. We have a strong start tonight. It's the one little button that you always forget that gets you. We got a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to be talking about a bunch of things. We're going to be talking about a lot of the developments over the week. There's been some rather interesting ones. We had the provincial budget come out on Tuesday, and then we had some new legislation get sort of explained on Wednesday. We're going to talk about all of that. We're also going to be talking about some of the finer points of the budget with Take Back Alberta thrown into the mix with our very own Sarah Biggs, politico, strategist, all around great person. But before we do, we got to talk about the story that's already up on the screen because I already did this introduction. I feel like I did it better the second time. I'm not sure. I'm going to say that I did, though. And the story that we're talking about tonight, to start with, is the story from the Western Standard. So, to recap, and for those of you who are hearing this for the second time on the Twitter Spaces, feel free to join in because you probably know the words already. Back at the beginning of February, the Western Standard, I've done that joke twice now. I feel like it was funnier the second time. Western Standard did a publishing of a thing. I'm not going to call it an article. I'm not going to call it a news report. And there's a bunch of different reasons that'll become clearer in just a second here. But the Western Standard did a thing where they talked about an incident that allegedly happened in a change room in Calgary where a 9-year-old girl allegedly, I'm not even going to say allegedly, and you'll see why in just a second, reportedly, publishedly, was changing in the female washroom where they encountered a trans woman who, as per the Western Standard, was running around with all their business out. And the little girl came out, was very alarmed, told her dad, "Hey, Dad, there's this guy running around in the washroom. It's very scary. My childhood has been shattered. Please do something." So the father, who was, of course, acting in the best interests of the child and women everywhere, believing that men have no business in the change room, rushed into the change room where he confronted the trans person. Now, this story, fiction, maybe, probably, almost definitely. We'll get to that in a sec. This story touched off a firestorm. There has been a growing amount of anti-trans rhetoric and sentiment that has been imported by and large from the United States. And it seems like the Western Standard just really didn't want to be left out. So they decided that they were going to run this story. Now, we've also seen in Calgary, there's been reports where people have been charging into reading. It's called Reading with Royalty, and it's where drag kings and queens and monarchs read to children. That's it. They're reading books. That's all. They're children's books. It's not a big deal. It's also been going on in Calgary for 15 years. But because of this increased hateful rhetoric, there's been increasing protests around these Reading with Royalty events. And we saw that there was a pastor last weekend who charged into one of these events and told all the people there that they were going straight to hell. Never mind the fact, it's important to realize there's a big difference between drag and trans. Drag is performance art. Getting upset at somebody being dressed in drag is getting upset at somebody being dressed like getting upset at someone being dressed in a stormtrooper costume or in an Ewok or a Wookiee costume, or pick whatever you want. It is performance art. That's different than an individual who's trans, just to be clear. Nonetheless, these hate mongers don't seem to be able to wrap their heads around this difference. And so they've been showing up at all of these Reading with Royalty events. And we saw this week that some of these events have had to be postponed because of safety concerns, not safety concerns associated with the performers who want to read to children. Safety concerns with the hate mongers and the bigots who are coming out to protest these events, to force their way in and to traumatize the children and the families way more than anything that's happening with these reading events. My God, the reading. It's been going on for a while. So much so, and things have been getting so out of control, the Calgary police finally got involved. Well, they've been involved for a while, I should be said, but they released a statement. And what that statement said was what the Western Standard reported didn't happen. Now, the Western Standard's been doing a lot of controversial, dog whistly, hate-based rhetoric lately. We saw a couple of weeks ago, the gentleman Rahim Mohammed published a story that implied, at best, dog whistled aggressively at worst, used hateful, bigoted tropes in order to get clicks. I'm not being libelous saying that because the author of the story, after trying to imply that Janice Irwin would include drag reading with a curriculum if she became the education minister, he came out and he said, hey, he tried to defend it initially, but then he came out and he was like, hey, you know what? I was trying to get clicks. I said a bunch of stuff I probably shouldn't have. I definitely shouldn't have. I'm really sorry. I'm going to be taking a break from social media and I'm not going to be writing for the Western Standard anymore. I'm really sorry, everybody. I'm going to take some time to reflect. And it took him a little while to get there, but he got there. So you got to kind of say, well, you did a really bad thing and you hurt people and you inflamed this sentiment, but at least you had the temerity and the wherewithal to say, I did a bad thing and I'm sorry. That's not what the author of the article that remains up. This same article. This remains up. We pulled the screen capture of this article from I think it's from February 9th, February 6th. We pulled this afternoon. This story remains up. The author of the article is a fascinating character named Arthur C. Green. He's been writing for the Western Standard for quite a while. Hobbies include, apparently, running around transit platforms and public spaces and taking pictures of houseless people because that's not at all intrusive or creepy or weird, and then publishing them to his various social media accounts. That's Arthur. But Arthur, he didn't apologize. Here's what Arthur had to say. It's not false. I interviewed the parent again this morning. She is actually trying to form a protest today at City Hall. Meanwhile, and then he goes on to attack some other folks. And then he includes presumably a text message where the parent, she sent it to him and she said that she can only speak to what she witnessed. Here's the problem. If we go back to that original article that was published on February 6th, that remains up, that the Calgary police have said is inaccurate. Well, Arthur C. Green says, no, totally accurate. Talked to the parent, verified everything. She totally agrees. Let's take a moment and do a little story time ourselves and read from the article. The concerned parent said he wasn't the only one at the pool who had questions, but he was the only one willing to speak up at the time the incident occurred. He had questions for the lifeguard on duty. So Arthur C. Green publishes a story where very, very clearly the gender of the parent is clearly defined as male because we use the word he like 4 or 5 times in just that paragraph. But now, when he's defending the story and saying, no, all of a sudden, that parent has now become female. There's some inconsistencies here. There's some garbage reporting here. And maybe before Arthur C. Green and the Western Standard go attacking people based on indeterminate gender, they should perhaps figure out the gender and the identity of the person that they're allegedly getting this story from, because they're feeding hate, they're feeding bigotry, and they can't even keep their story straight. Moving on from there, though, we have some fun things to talk about. As we got into Wednesday, we saw Joseph Chow come out and say, "Hey guys, you know what? We've got some stuff we got to talk about. We've got some legislation we're going to be introducing." Want to play a quick little clip before we get too far into it.
It will also include an amendment to the Trespass to Premises Act and Petty Trespass Act to prevent the entry of federal government employees onto private land.
What problem are you trying to solve that's happening in Alberta?
Well, we are seeing federal employees trespass onto private land in Alberta, and as a result of that, we don't think that that's appropriate. So we're making that an offense in this province, so that especially with the water testing, I think was an issue that's been addressed. So should federal employees decide to trespass on private land, they'll be charged.
Okay, tell me a little
This
bit
is
more
already
about
happening?
where is this happening? What specifically, which federal employees, and then what would be the penalties if they were caught doing that?
Well, now you're asking me to get into greater detail about the bill. I'm going to leave that to the Minister of Justice.
Well, the trespassing isn't in the bill. What's happening on the ground that you're hearing about, that's not in the bill.
Well, like I said, I'm going to leave it to the Minister of Justice to speak in greater detail about the bill. What I'm here to do is to lay out the legislation that we are going to be bringing forward and give you, some high-level information. But I can't really go into great detail because the bill has not been tabled. And once it's tabled, you'll get a chance to look at it in greater detail and ask all your questions to the appropriate minister.
Can you tell us, has that already happened? Or is that something that you think might happen?
Yes, it has happened.
When?
In Alberta?
What's that, sorry?
When and where?
So, like I said, I'm not going to go into great detail about the bill.
It has already happened. I feel like this is something that you should tell us if you're enacting a bill on this.
So we're going to go, like I said, just questions for the minister, and you're welcome to ask him those questions when the bill is addressed, or rather when the bill is introduced. But at the moment, I'm going to give you the high-level points of this session.
Now, that was Joseph Chow, UCP House Leader, giving a masterclass on how not to host a press conference. The bill that there's being introduced, it's got some problems with it, but we don't want to talk too much about the details. All you need to know is that it has happened in Alberta. Federal employees have gone onto private property without permission. That's straight from Joseph Chow. He said yes when asked the question. There's really no way to confuse that, right? Unless, of course, that hasn't happened. Because in the article that you see on your screen right there, the reporters did exactly what Mr. Chow said. He said, "Hey, you know what? You got to talk to the justice minister. He'll set the record straight. I just know this is a problem. People are going on private property in Alberta. Worst thing ever." Well, the reporters went and they spoke to the justice minister. They got a statement back from the justice minister's press secretary, and they said, "Well, okay, it hasn't actually happened, but we heard a story in this other province, and there's some people who are upset about the story. So we're going to introduce a law to make it so that federal employees can't go on to private property to do water testing or anything like that. Like, if you have your own land, it should be your own land. Nobody should be able to go onto it under any circumstances without your permission." And there's a couple problems with that. First one, the obvious question that comes to my mind is, what if stuff's on fire? What if there's a medical emergency? Are people allowed to go on private property then? Turns out the answer to both of those questions is yes. Also turns out that there are federal laws that would supersede anything that the province tries to put together that very clearly say that there are circumstances under which federal employees, including things like water testing, can go onto private property. They're not allowed to go into people's houses. They're not allowed to mess with like personal possessions or anything like that. But if they have to do water quality testing or other things like that, it's perfectly legal for them to do so. And it's backed up by federal law, which again supersedes whatever laws the province would potentially try to put forward. Not only is this performative, but it should be alarming to just about everybody that the UCP House Leader was point blank asked, "Hey, has this happened in Alberta?" And he was quite happy to say yes, even though the Justice Minister's office says, well, no, it hasn't. At this point, we're seeing government officials, high-ranking government officials, just making stuff up in order to justify the agenda that they've been told that they're going to try to justify for the base of the party, presumably. But he got it totally wrong. Moving on from there. We got to talk just a little bit more about the limo ride. So for anybody who missed it, the story is Dr. John Cowell was appointed. Well, the AHS board was fired because they were incompetent, allegedly, and Dr. John Cowell was brought in to be the sole chief administrator. He's going to right the ship. He's going to fix all the wrongs. We played a bit in our last episode where he talked about the fact that he was told healthcare was in crisis, AHS is broken, and then he was happy to say, no, that's not the case. It turns out healthcare's fine. Everything's fine. There's nothing to see here. The ship is running perfectly. There's no problems. Everything's going great. It's only getting better. Now, obviously, there's a lot of evidence that suggests to the contrary. One need look no farther than the almost daily threads put out by Twitter user at YYC Cowboy, where he illustrates how many rural hospitals are closed for emergency rooms, how many rural hospitals are closed for obstetrics or delivering babies. He posted one today that has some particularly interesting implications for EMS. It looks like paramedics are going to love it because the directive appears to be that paramedics will hit a hospital 45 minutes later. They're going to be back out on the streets. And that's cool for paramedics. It's cool for people who need paramedics, but this is being dropped effectively very, very soon. I don't want to say the exact times because I don't have the email that he posted in front of me, but this is predicated on the idea that Danielle Smith announced that they were going to be hiring 114 nurses to take over patients. But she was very clear in the press conference that she had earlier this week that they haven't hired them yet. So they're implementing a policy without having the safety net in place to take care of the patients. And hospitals are reportedly saying, oh, how are we going to do this? So another excellent example of putting the cart before the horse. But I'm getting away from the point. Dr. John Cowell was appointed. Shortly after he was appointed, there's this throne speech. Nobody wants to miss a throne speech. That's like a political Super Bowl event, almost as big of a deal as the budget. Nobody wants to miss that. You got to go up to Edmonton if you want to see that happen. He was invited by the Premier of Alberta. You can't say no to that, especially when you're in this new role of fixing healthcare. How did Dr. John Cowell get up there? Well, he did what any average Albertan would do. He hired a limo for the day to drive him there, stay with him, and drive him back at a cost of $1,400 to the taxpayer. Now, there's been a lot of back and forth as to how legitimate this was. People have been posting lots of pictures of what would a bus ride cost. People have been posting lots of pictures of what would a plane ride cost, what would a rental car look like, what would a rental car in a hotel look like. And most of those numbers still come up lower. Now, Minister Copping has come out and said, you know what? It was a reasonable cost. But reasonable is an important thing to kind of put into perspective. Because on one hand, $1,400 to hire a limo to drive you up to Edmonton and around for the day and then drive you home. I don't know what the running cost of a limo is, but I imagine that's probably pretty on par for what limos cost. I don't know. You can leave it in the comments if anybody has any current or accurate pricing. But here's the thing. The optics suck. Whether or not you can justify it as an expense doesn't change the fact that it does not speak to an awareness of the current climate in Alberta. Cost of living is so high right now. Inflation is so out of control right now that Danielle Smith and her government have implemented a bunch of affordability measures. They've slashed revenues for the province by some estimates, upwards of $2 billion through the gas tax elimination or pause. They have provided selectively $100 per child or really old person for 6 months. They've left a lot of people out of that, though. Stuff is expensive. Here's perhaps the best way to put $1,400 in context. The UCP, after cutting AISH by de-indexing it, announced just a little while ago, hey, you know what? We're gonna make AISH more reasonable. We're gonna raise the value of AISH. What's the difference between how much it cost for this limo and how much a person on AISH gets to live off of for an entire month? $387. That's it. A person on AISH currently lives off of $1,787 a month. But here we have the chief administrator of Alberta Health Services spending $1,400 on a limo to take him to the throne speech days after he had been tasked with fixing Alberta Health Services. Now, before we move on from there, we want to take a quick second to check in with our newest compliments of, and I got to give props again to this person because I don't know who they are, but at Disordered YYC is a Twitter user who has a gift, and he's using it for good, or she is using it for good. It's awesome. They hooked us up, I'll say, with our latest political commentator. They have lots of experience in politics. They've been in elected office before. They have some thoughts on the types of spending that we see from particularly the higher levels in healthcare.
The minister often speaks about how great Alberta's healthcare system is, and on that point, he is right. We have great doctors, nurses, facilities, and support systems. But the administration is abysmal. Cavalier attitude toward expenses displayed by current and former health executives is shocking.
It is shocking, isn't it? The more things change, the more things stay the same. Last thing we got to talk about is budget stuffs. So we got the budget, came down, and as we discussed on our last episode, and we're going to discuss a little bit more when Sarah Biggs joins us, it's a big spendy budget, but it's spendy in weird ways. Because some of the ways, like it's very clearly an election budget, and as we talked, and we're going to be talking, by the way, we're getting Dr. Trevor Toom on the show in a couple of weeks, and he's going to help make sense of the budget and put it in a little bit of context because there's some things that he's made it very clear on social media that he's concerned about. We're doubling down on the resource roller coaster with this budget. But we're also putting some money in some interesting places. So first of all, despite the fact that Danielle Smith spent the first chunk of her time in office talking about, oh gosh, Calgary, they really need a new arena. And I'm not just saying that because I used to be president of the group that one of the biggest involved members of owns the Flames. No, I'm concerned about the arena situation. It has nothing to do with any sort of premier affiliations or obligations. I just really want to see this arena. This thing's got to get sorted out. Well, it turns out there's no money in the budget for any kind of arena. Danielle Smith talked a lot about, hey, you know what? The train to Banff. We got to get a train going to Banff. Super important because reasons. And those reasons absolutely don't have anything to do with the fact that the person who's advocating strongly for the train to Banff also has deep financial interests in Banff and also has a large history of donating to the Wild Rose when Danielle Smith was leader at the time. No, that's just a coincidence. We just really need a train to Banff, despite the fact that the UCP government previously looked at it and said there's no business case. Well, it turns out it's not a great business case, according to Mr. Taves, to throw some money Calgary's way. And there's a lot of people who are really upset about that. Don Braid wrote a scathing column this week where he called out the lack of anything from the UCP MLAs who represent Calgary, of which there are more than a few. There's 21. And the vast majority of ministers are from Calgary as well. But it's an election budget. So we gotta spend some money to not in any way buy or influence votes. Nope, that's not it. But in all of this, one of the people who cleaned up the most, in more than one way by some reports, but in at least one, was Premier Danielle Smith. Because she gave her office a $3 million increase in budget. That's a 23% increase in budget. That's almost a quarter of an increase in budget from what her office had previously. But now, for some reason, with this budget, the biggest budget in recent memory, now we need to make sure that Danielle Smith gets her $3 million increase to her premier's office. Now, it's important to realize, and we talked about this on the Twitter machine before, but it's important to take it in context. Jason Kenney cut MLA's salaries. He cut the resources that MLAs have to play with. Here's Danielle Smith. She's not doing anything for the MLAs, not doing a whole lot for the ministers, but her office, yeah, we got to get paid. All of this happens on the heels of a legislative calendar that has already been messed up. This is the legislative calendar for 2023. Now, you can go back and forth on this. And I want to be clear. I'm not calling out individual MLAs. Okay? I have no illusions. MLAs do work hard, even when some of them do work hard, even when they're not in the legislature. But it is reasonable to think, perhaps, that if you're going to have an MLA and you're electing them to represent you in the legislature, they might spend more than, I don't know, a fifth, slightly less than a fifth of the year actually in the legislature. Historically, they do. But with Danielle Smith's government, they don't. And we've already seen a reduction in the amount of time that they're going to be spending in the legislature. Because as you can see here, they were supposed to resume sitting at the legislature on Tuesday. Well, they showed up, they had a conversation about the budget. Then Wednesday and Thursday, legislature was also supposed to be sitting. Guess what? It didn't. And it's not scheduled currently to return until the 6th. So the MLAs and the ministers who gave themselves an early Christmas, and let's not forget, they dropped a week off of their legislative schedule right before Christmas last year. And this was when they were, and I hate to sound cheesy about it, but there were no shortage of tweets and Facebook posts from teachers who had said, hey, you know what? We had gone out of our way to schedule a field trip for our kids to be engaged in government so they could see how government works, so they could see how good government's supposed to perform, so they could watch the MLAs and the ministers debating stuff in the legislature. We had a whole plan. And then all of a sudden they were like, nope, see ya. We got gingerbread to deal with. That happened just a couple months ago. And already they're cutting days off of the legislative calendar with no public explanation that we could find. So that's responsible government, I guess. We got one more, and then we're going to not only open up the floor to anybody on Twitter Spaces who wants to join in. If you have any thoughts that you want to share, if there's something that I've said that's false, please feel free to jump on and weigh in. Do know if you tell me that I'm wrong, we're going to be fact checking as we go, because that's just the kind of show that we run here. But if you have some thoughts, absolutely would love to hear from you. You can do that on the Twitter Spaces just by clicking on the little microphone thing on the bottom left of your mobile device. If you're listening on a computer, I'm told that you still can't do that. And if you're watching on the YouTubes or the Facebooks, God help you, then you can leave a comment and we'll do our best to address them going forward from there. But we got one other thing that we got to talk about, because it's not a great look. Hey, Alberta Party, how are you doing? Not so great these days, hey? The Alberta Party have been announcing some candidates, and that's good. They've had some really strong candidates that they've announced. They've got Carrie Kundal and Elbow. They've got Dr. Jennifer Grace, both of whom have, I don't know if we've had Carrie on the show. We've for sure had Dr. Jennifer Grace on the show a bunch of times. And they got a bunch of other candidates they're popping up. But they announced another one earlier in the week. And it appears that they didn't do, I don't know, any sort of oppositional research, any vetting? Because the candidate that they nominated, that they allowed to run, allegedly, is a bit of a character. Danielle Smith tweeted him out back in August, thanking him for selling, for going door to door and spreading the good word of the UCP and trying to get people signed up for her leadership race. He's also advocated strongly for the Sovereignty Act, even though that's not a thing anymore. He's got nothing but good things to say about Drew Barnes. And he advocates that, we need to start recognizing hybrid immunity. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because there's some other stuff that this gentleman has said. People have found Facebook posts, social media posts, where he's claimed that he can smell when somebody is asymptomatic with flu viruses or with COVID. That's just a thing he's always been able to do, which isn't a thing that anyone can do. Otherwise, we wouldn't need COVID tests and PCR testing. Just throwing it out there. This was pointed out to the Alberta Party, almost a week ago now. And the only response that we've been able to find was a one-word reply on somebody's tweet where they said, "What's happening here? This isn't the Alberta Party that we know and love. This isn't even in line with your policies. This is a bit of a train wreck. What you doing here, Alberta Party?" And their response was one word, and it was just wait. So I guess that's what's happening with the Alberta Party. It's a hurry up and wait type situation. So that's super fun. It'll be really interesting to see what they do, if they do anything, and of course, in the interest of all fairness, if they do decide to address the issue in some way, we will do our very best to share that, as we have done with the multiple UCP candidates that we've called out for saying bigoted, hateful things and being raging huge fans of Donald Trump. We will. Thank you. It's Dr. Angela Grace. I'm going to pay for that. It's Dr. Angela Grace. I was thinking of the Jennifer who's like one constituency over Yermy, I think it is. I take full responsibility for that, and I'll own my mistake and correct it. Alberta Party, you could be taking some notes. Not saying, just saying. Looks like we got at least one person who wants to weigh in Twitter Spaces, and we don't have a Sarah Biggs yet. So I'm going to go ahead and hopefully add them to the conversation a little bit here. The politics, I right now it's just showing up on my screen as the poly, but the politics of disability and equity. What's going on tonight? If you unmute your microphone, love to hear what's going
on. What's going on? Well, oh God, I have to focus because there's just so much going on in my ADHD brain. It goes like a million miles a minute. But one of the things, and I know I've mentioned it to you, when I see them pumping up sheriffs in Calgary and Edmonton, when I see them turning around and trying to pass legislation, trying to prevent federal employees from trespassing, I think voter suppression.
Okay.
I think and I could be wrong, but that's my fear. Is this a precursor? Are you trying to ramp things up so you're getting prepared for the election, and you're going to try, if the feds if somebody says, hey, we want you to check in on our elections because we're not feeling confident, and they put people in place to protect the integrity at the polling stations, is this a precursor to try to stop that? I don't know. I talk a lot about, I talk a lot about some historical values in regards to, like, who are the UCP? What is Unite the Right? Where did it come from? Unite the Right comes really from I don't know, the late 90s, early 2000s. It was the Reform Party. They had achieved official opposition status, and then it came out that they had connections with this neo-Nazi organization called the Heritage Front. They kicked a bunch of them out. They still weren't electable because nobody bought Preston Manning's line about, oh, I didn't know who they were. We withdrew their memberships. A very prolific guy at the time, Wolfgang Droege, came out. He was the leader of the Canadian version of that and said, oh, no, because he was seen at Reform Party events still, even though his membership was apparently withdrawn. He says, oh, no, we fully support the Reform Party or the Alliance Party, whatever it was at that time, and said, and the reason we support them and we're right behind them is because their economic policies, as well as their immigration and multiculturalism policies, are directly in line with our ideology. And, anyway, they became unelectable. They lost their official opposition status. I think that's around the time they decided to become the Alliance Party. They still couldn't get elected, but they managed between them and the Bloc to split the vote enough that the PCs, the federal PCs, were reduced to 2 seats, I believe it was. And I'm going by memory because,
Yeah, it was 2 or 4.
I'm old enough to remember all of this when it happened. And so anyway, that happened. And then one of the things that Preston Manning was very, very, very vocal about was that he wanted to destroy the Progressive Conservative Party. So when they were reduced to 2 seats, that's when they took their opportunity under Stephen Harper. They said, we're going to unite the right. And they made a deal with Peter MacKay, the leader of the PC party, and they joined and they became the Conservative Party. But the Reform Party has overwhelmingly been what's controlled it all along. And that includes people like Jason Kenney. We like to say, oh, well, he wasn't as bad as Danielle Smith. But make no mistake, his ideologies were the same. He just knew from history, because he was around at that time, that being too out there and too blatant about them is not going to let you get anything done that you want to get done. You have to do it slowly and as quietly as possible so nobody notices. So he came out here to Alberta after the NDP one, says, oh, the reason the NDP one is, they're all divided. We're going to what? Oh, unite the right, which is the exact same language that they used back in early 2000, late 90s. It's the exact same thing. And, it's no, like, ever since this has all happened 20 plus some odd years ago, there has been both federally and arguably provincially a habit of these guys constantly getting their pictures taken and going to events with white nationalists and neo-Nazis. And they always say, oh, we didn't know, when they get caught, which is exactly the same tactic that Manning used. And my concern, and I'll tell you, and this drives me nuts, there's the fact that Danielle Smith has decided to pay Preston Manning $250,000 to do something that arguably shouldn't warrant him getting $250,000. Says to me that this is just a fancy, sneaky way of trying to pay him for being a consultant, because everything she says and does it's right out of his playbook. It is so like his playbook, and I honestly remember it all like it happened yesterday. And yeah, that's what I keep seeing, and I keep raising the alarms, because I think they really duped the progressive conservatives. A lot of honest, good progressive conservatives, they really duped them into voting, like voters and stuff, into thinking that they're still voting for the same party, but they're not. They were voting for something that they ultimately all rejected. But now that it was under a same name and it was Unite the Right, all of a sudden people got confused. And now we're seeing it happen all over again right here in Alberta. And, you know, somebody has said to me, well, you know, Banning, he's getting old and blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, but he has aspirations. And he, you know, in the past, he was always very federal about not getting into provincial politics, but they've succeeded in, of course, what they wanted to do with the PCs federally. And Alberta is a ripe place, unfortunately, because it's been so traditionally conservative, for them to turn around and go, okay, here's our opportunity. And if you think about this, if they can get one province, once they got that province, then they have more leverage to start maybe going and trying to do the same thing
I think they call
right
it a
across the
foothold.
country. And, you know, I said I was going to connect it to something else. My family, so my grandparents came to Alberta from Germany in 1924. They never talked about why they left, but I spent my entire life researching the political, socio-economic, and every other thing going on in Germany at the time. 1923 was the year of what they called the Munich Putsch, or the beer hall putsch, German word for coup d'etat, where Hitler in 1923 marched with a bunch of people from some beer halls, because that was the place of political discourse at the time, much like Twitter is now. Think of Twitter as a beer hall. And they marched to the parliament in Munich, and they planted bombs, and they had tiki torches, and they tried to overthrow the government. When I woke up on January 6th and turned on the news, I don't know what anybody else saw, but the first thing that I saw was beer hall putsch. That's what came to my mind. And when I heard the news about what they were doing, it said the same thing. And I don't think it was any accident that this precipitated something else that happened here in Canada. And that would be the convoy and their letter of understanding.
The
And
convoy was a little bit like it kind of overlapped.
yeah. No, it did overlap. And so, you know, my whole thing is, I think we just need to be cognizant. A lot of people like to say, remember the Holocaust, remember this. Oh, don't call them Nazis, they didn't do this. And it's like, what we need to remember is not just the Holocaust, but how did we get there? And how we got there was, like, I've been raising the alarms about things for a couple years now. Nobody, oh, you're overreacting. But as we inch closer, some of the things that I've said, if we don't watch out, this could happen, have happened. And it's becoming more and more real. People like to say that it happened because of apathy, but apathy is not the sole reason. There's something else besides apathy. And it's this idea that we are comfortable, we've lived in a pretty free country, and we just can't wrap our heads around that this could ever repeat itself here. And that's where we are in danger.
Yeah, I think I got to jump in just for a quick sec there, because
Right.
I hear what you're saying, and I certainly agree that there's definitely some similarities in tactics and some similarities in dog whistles and all of that sort of thing. I mean, when I saw that they'd rolled out their new slogan about securing futures, I definitely got a little bit twitchy, because all anyone needs to do is Google 14 words, and you'll see why that's not the best invocation. But I think one other thing I wanted to say is that I think it's really important to you can be very bad things without being a Nazi. I mean, a Nazi is a very specific, and I've dealt with people who have walked around in SS uniforms, and I mean, back in my day, we dealt with things a little bit more directly, I'll say. So there are for sure people who are out there who have those sorts of aspirations. There are other people, though, and I think this is more what Daniel Smith falls into, and some members of the UCB cough take back Alberta. We're going to bring Sarah Biggs in just a second here, where they're willing to use some of the same tactics, but I think that we need to be cautious. Like, I'm getting more and more comfortable with people using the word fascism when it comes to the UCP government, simply because it's starting to more and more meet the technical definition. But one of the things that I'm always very cautious of, and it's not because I'm trying to minimize the
Right.
very bad things
Well,
that
and
are
I have something
happening.
to answer to this when you're finished.
Okay. And then I got to bring Sarah in because she's waiting and she's got
Okay,
a sore
that's
back, and
fair.
I don't want to keep her too long. But I think that it's very important that we're deliberate with the kind of language that we use, because if we start to invoke saying things like, Daniel Smith is a Nazi. I don't believe Daniel Smith is a Nazi. I believe Daniel Smith is all
I
kinds
don't
of
know that
terrible
she is
things.
either. I'm not saying that either.
Perfect. One of the dangers is when you go down the road of rhetoric that is so emotionally charged, there are two reactions that I think that people have commonly. One of them is to go, yeah, they're the worst. And the other one is to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. If you're going to throw that around, I'm out. And so I think
Yeah.
that talking about the effects of what they're doing and the similarities is probably more productive, I'll say cautiously.
Well,
Ironically enough.
and I agree with you, Nate. And I'll just quickly say, like I'm not trying to say that every single person in the UCP, including Daniel Smith, is a Nazi. But one of the things that happened during the Weimar Republic and what gave rise is the Nazi Party did not. Well, they had some anti-Semitic ideas, but they did not think, when they grabbed a hold of this guy called Adolf Hitler, they thought that they could control him and that he was a means to an end. They did not necessarily believe in the worst things about him, and they believed that they can control him and that he was a means to an end to gain power. And so I'm not saying that that all these people are this, but what I am saying is that there is a cautionary tale in that there are people that are thinking that, oh, well, if we just stick around, we can monitor this and we can keep certain aspects of this under control. But right now, we're going to utilize this to get what we want.
Oh, I think that there's certainly some people who are trying to mediate the impact of Daniel Smith and folks like Take Back Alberta.
Yeah.
I'm very, very cautious when we're talking about historic events like the Holocaust or other genocides. I think that it's really important that we treat those things as separate entities entirely. We can talk about,
Okay, but the
hey,
final
these sorts of
solution
things.
didn't happen till later. 1920, I'm talking about 1923.
No, I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
All that I'm
Yeah.
trying to say is that, again, while there are similarities in tactics, and certainly, I think one of the big questions that people need to ask is, if you belong to a party that is constantly having to say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! I don't know where these guys came from. We're not white supremacists. We're not racist or anything like that." Here's a problem I've never had. I've never
Yeah.
had white supremacists say, "I want to hang out with that Nate guy some more." There's
Exactly.
like that's not a problem. But I want to thank you so much for tapping in tonight.
Okay.
Um,
Well, yeah, and I want to let Sarah come on, and I just want to say that yeah, like I'm with you. We are on the same page. I just there is that aspect that they're trying to harness to gain votes, and it's dangerous. And we need people like Sarah and others to keep being vocal and standing up and driving them out.
Speaking of letting Sarah Biggs be vocal, I'm going to bring her in right now. Sarah Biggs, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm so glad
And
that
I'm
you
going to
joined
be
us.
disappointing a lot of people tonight because I promised someone they really, really respect and I consider it and like my mentor that I would not be swearing.
That's okay. You know what?
I made a promise.
You filled the jar up plenty last week. So I think
Fuddle is gonna be the new.
there we go. That's a perfectly good F. Nerf, we'll call it.
Smurf.
Nerf.
Smurfing.
You got two things that I want to bug you about tonight. So
Been
the
a
first,
week.
it's you've had a weekend, and I know you're tired, and I know
No,
that
it's been a long week. Like everything happened at once.
it's true. We had the budget, we had all of the other stuff, but I want to hear budget. You said you were going to take a look.
Yeah.
Any particular highlights that you wanted to bring up?
$85 million for private and charter schools expansion.
That's cool though, right? Like that's not a problem.
It happens, right? So here's the thing. That budget is set. Sorry, because I'm just putting up, I'm not reading the comments. I am pulling up my worksheets. Okay. Where are you? I lost you. Oh, this tab. Okay. So
I'm right here.
Yeah, I see you now. So no, I don't want to restore Google. Shh. So that budget to me is a budget that is meant for the next 90 days. It is a budget designed. So it is a budget designed to make sure that she goes across the finish line. It is a shield budget. It is a nostalgia budget. Back in 2006 when we're told, natural gas will never go down, everything's going to be okay. So we're spending, what, $58 billion this year? And the problem is that we have created an unsustainable budget environment for the future. And that is my concern. No, corporate taxes are at 8% right now. We could increase them to 10 to 11%, and nobody would scream. It would not drive, it would not drive investments away. Because, majority of the, if you compare corporate taxes to, taxpayer like you and me, the difference is quite, we're carrying the brunt of it. Interesting enough, federal transfers this year. How much, Nate?
I don't have it in front of me, but it was not a small amount. I can bring up the little graphy thing.
I think it's something like $13 billion.
It was not small. It was, I believe it was you that pointed out that if it was not for the federal transfers, as in the money that we get from the federal government,
yeah,
we would be in a deficit.
We would be in deficit. So, okay. So, that budget is, so what we're seeing is that, okay, affordability is going away in June. Agriculture and irrigation, it's going up, but the 2022-2023 forecast was 1.9 billion. We're going down to 892. Jobs, economy, development, and the 2022-23 budget was 419, going down to 374. Not everything is an increase. Children's services, let's go see it. Children's services got increased quite a bit, 600 millions. 600 million supply grant. It's very nitty gritty. Like, I had people helping me, like, gathering everything, and thank you to that person. You know who he is. It's the devil is in the details. It's the small programs. Like, okay, so they have increased the education budget by $463 million. So I did the math, and it's about $600 per student. But then here's the caveat. We will not know how the education dollars will be spent until the school boards are putting out their budget and their estimates, right? So we don't know where that money's going to go. Indigenous relations got increased, which is always good. Um, you know, municipal affairs got a little bit of an increase, but not much. So, you know, municipalities will have to increase their taxes because it's not sustainable with, you know, the price of everything right now. Interestingly enough, for street park and tourism, seeing a little decrease. The forecast for 22-23 was 581. We're going down at 435 for an estimate,
Well,
which is interesting.
one of the other areas that got screwed is the harm reduction area.
Yeah.
Supervised consumption sites got smoked. They got a $5 million cut.
Yep.
Harm reduction got a $5 million cut.
Yep.
Supervised consumption sites went from, where was it? 21.2 million to 14.5 million.
$1 million. I'm just gonna give, you know, public safety and emergency services. They budgeted $1.053 billion last year. This year got increased to $1.217 billion. What's interesting is that there's a line item that says grants to others for $236 million.
Cough, Grand Prairie Police Force cough.
Well, maybe not. We'll see what's going to happen because, you know, Grand Prairie's talking about their own municipality police now, which is fine. It's okay. It's not a provincial police. It's a municipal, you know, it's fine.
Well, except that the province has said that if they do go ahead with it, they'll kick in at least 10 million of starter money, and that's just the starter money.
Yeah. And then you have like culture is going up because, you know, the Telus Park is it's going to be as fun as Disneyland, apparently. And there's a lot of things are like technology and innovation, social support services. It went from like 7.6 billion to 17.5 billion dollars. So that's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen here. There's a lot to it, right? But definitely the programs are meant to help individuals suffering and difficulties, struggling with addiction. You know, everything is related that does not fit their narrative is being axed, and that's extremely unfortunate. Advanced ed, they got $300 million. Skilled trade profession got next to 13. Whoopidoo. Mental health and addiction, they went from 101 to 166, and then it's just, yeah.
But a lot of that is those new abstinence-based communities that Smith is starting up. I want to just answer a question that was in the comments here real quick. It was asked, was it an austerity or a spending budget? I think it's both. Yeah, it's a spending budget if your things align with Smith's priorities. It's an austerity budget if they don't. And I'm going to go back to the harm reduction budget because that is one that drives me particularly crazy. We're talking about evidence-based modalities that actually work, that keep people alive, that divert people to services, that reduce the number of needles on the streets. Like I could go on and on and on.
Yes.
And those are the areas that are getting cut to push ahead with a model that has far less evidence of being effective.
You know, also, I lost my train of thought. So if you, like I wrote this week, if you look at a way of, you know, a regular Albertan who doesn't pay, you know, a lot of attention and just looks at the headlines, increase in education, increase in the healthcare, increase in mental health and all that, the budget looks good on the surface. But when you start scratching, so the UCP will be better off the less people are scratching down the surface. I was talking about, you know, personal income tax. So for this year, personal income tax are expected to be $14 billion, and corporate income tax, my friends, you want to know how much? 5.9.
5.9. Which is wild because here's the two things. First of all, I don't know about the average Albertan, but I feel like, based on the kind of rhetoric that we've seen from both of the major political parties, there is a real cost of living crisis going on. Whereas if you take a look at a lot of the major corporations, there's a, oh man, where are we going to put all our money problem? And so the fact that personal income taxes are 3 times what corporate taxes are, when Alberta has, by like a lot, the lowest corporate tax rate. We could go to 10% and still be in the top of the least. That's a weird way to position it. But we would still have some of the lowest corporate taxes in the country.
We do.
Uh,
So transfers. Canada Health Transfer. Hold on, I'm making sure that I'm at the those columns. I'm telling you, it's killing me.
you just look at the Trevor Tomb graphs. That's how I get away with it.
Okay. So, budget estimate. Sorry guys, I look exhausted and not very motivated, but I'm trying to make sense out of this. Okay. Canada Health Transfer 6.79, Canada Social Transfer almost 2 billion. Direct transfer to Alberta Innovates Corporation $600 million. Other payment including a $750 million fiscal stability. $750 million. Canada, Alberta, Canada-wide early learning childcare agreement. 937, labor market, agriculture, infrastructure. We're getting a lot of money from the feds, and
12.5 million.
and it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. But the thing is that, gaming went up. Okay, Berta, we need to talk. Oh, drinking went down. Okay, that's good. But at the end of the day, the government needs to look at new and streams of revenue, because right now we're seeing 75, 80, $82 a barrel. We're doing fine. Okay, we pissed away the surplus. We have $2.4 billion left, 1.5 in this, emergency fund, and just in case oopsies, we decided to give money away to someone that we're not planning on to, maybe. But then what are we going to do in 3 years? What are we going to do in 5 years? What are we going to do in 10 years? That's the thing. Like, I don't mind paying my corporate taxes. I don't mind paying my taxes, but the brunt should not be supported like 3 times fold by the taxpayers. It should be also the corporations. And I'm not a socialist here. I'm just thinking about that new framework that they put on about, forcing the ministers to have a balanced budget every year. Because what's going to happen in 5 years? Healthcare is going to go down. Education is going to go down. We're going to go back to, 2016 levels. It's just going to be horrendous. And universities are going to go higher. And here's a problem. They're putting the cap in 2024 and 2025 at 2% increase for universities, but the universities' funding are going down. So the universities will have less money to deal with. It's, if you look at it, it's like good budget, pretty budget. But if you look like my Doug Leonard, who has issues, when you start getting to know him, it's not always ideal.
There we go. The other thing that I wanted to talk about with you tonight is you wrote this little column. You did a tag team effort, and you were talking about, I don't know, the fundamental corrosion and corruption of our democracy in our province of Alberta. What am I referring to there, Sarah Biggs?
Nothing.
No, you can't do that. You got to run with it now.
Take back Alberta.
There we go. So you wrote a column with
I
Dr.
have 30,000 new best friends in the province.
You wrote a column with Dr. Dwayne Bratt, political scientist from Mount Royal University. And what was the thrust of the column? What was the, so you're saying, hey, the grassroots democracy that Take Back Alberta is bringing to the equation, we need more of this. That's what you're saying, right?
No. I said we need less Take Back Alberta, more, no nonsense. We wrote the column 3 weeks ago. Yeah, 3 weeks ago. And I kind of forgot what was in the column, so I had to read it because I wrote another piece this week, and there's a lot of stuff happening, so I kind of, forget, and I was going back, and I went to look into Telegram spaces, and they were like, oh yeah, what they wrote is accurate. We're not sure about the fundraising numbers, but those are fundraising numbers that those were goals that they set up for themselves on December 14th, because I have screenshots, guys. Sarah Biggs always has screenshots. So even the screenshot is saying that we are right about it. So basically, we're talking about how they're going from, constituency to constituency, and trying to fundraise money, and trying to take over every single, I was going to swear here, fuddle smurf constituency in the province, and really trying to take over the party. It is a takeover. I was talking to someone, sent me a DM today. Ooh. And they were talking how they don't even announce when they're not in favor of a nominee for the UCP in a riding, or they're not supporting that candidate. They don't make themselves announce. They don't even announce themselves when they come in for meetings. Usually people find out, and they're kind of sneaking in and listening and trying to understand it. Oh, by the way, Benny's restaurant in Calgary, to avoid, they had a TBA event the other day.
Denny's did?
Benny's.
Okay, I was like, you can't take away Denny's.
No, not Denny's.
I need my skillets.
Benny's. Yeah, no. Isn't it Humpty's that has skillets? I don't know.
Don't talk that way. We're sorry, Denny's. Please don't get angry.
I don't know.
I love the skillets.
Totally normal conversation. But no, so it's interesting how they and the individuals that they're targeting as well, right? They are trying to take over more and more and more. And what I've seen, so Twitter's been nice with me, because some what's that Coots guy? The name Van would you?
Van Huigenbus is how I like to say it.
He commented on my timeline when I posted the article, and was like, this is just the beginning. All right, bud, you're the CFO of Take Back Alberta. You're facing federal charges. That's great. But it was not, it was not a piece, and we were extremely careful when we were writing the piece to not defame, just go with facts. And that was something.
That's not always enough to keep you out of trouble, I'm told.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Because screenshots. But at the end of the day, it was meant to be more of an educational piece for individuals that do not understand how Take Back Alberta works. We wanted to make sure that they were aware. We want to make sure that people understand. We tried to simplify it. We tried to make it an easy and pleasant read on a Saturday morning with a very bitter coffee.
I don't know that it was pleasant, but it was an easy read.
So yesterday I was in a meeting all day, and I didn't know they were going to release it yesterday. And I got a message from Dwayne, and I was like, oh. I was like, oh no.
Oh, did you just Sarah Biggs?
No,
you
no,
meant
no.
to say...
I did not do I was like, oh, poo-poo doodle. And I had no idea they were going to release it yesterday, but it was quite fascinating to see some of the responses, and a lot of, but at the end of the day, when you know that certain individuals are saying that you're wrong, it's because you're right. So usually when I'm heading in the opposite direction as what they're doing, we're fine, we're okay. But that's the thing. If you are writing opinion pieces, when we need to be, when you're expressing an opinion, or you communicating some information about those groups, you need to stay with the facts. You have to, because if not, it's just going to make it harder and harder to be credible. So you need to stay with the facts.
You wouldn't want to, I don't think, for example, let's say that you were writing about Mr. Hugenbos, you wouldn't want to get his gender wrong depending on the story that you're writing, I imagine. That would probably damage the credibility of your overall story.
Yeah.
There's my
Yeah.
middle finger for the Western Standard again. I'm so going to keep on that one.
But no, it's been interesting. I'm getting messages, more and more messaging from individuals that have attended those Take Back Alberta meetings, and I don't know if I'm being told that they're broke,
No way.
but I'm having a hard time because there's, from what I was told, apparently they're telling people, we don't have a lot of money. Let's pass the hat.
Has the Lululemon money dried up all that much?
He's not Lululemon anymore. He sold it years ago. And don't tell me that because my home wardrobe is Lululemon.
So we got to back it up and just explain that a little bit,
Yes.
because there is
Pacific Network.
prosperity. There is a lot of ties between, including on their own website, there are a lot of ties between the grassroots organization that sprung up naturally as a reaction to I don't know what in Alberta, to political movements that actually originated in British Columbia. They had Pacific's Prosperity on their own website for quite some time. They have significant financial backing, allegedly, from BC. They have done similar programs almost as if they were doing a beta test or something. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
That's right.
Yeah, in BC. So this is not just a grassroots thing that has sprung up out of the natural outrage. This is a very coordinated, very sophisticated,
It's sophisticated. It's grassroots, but there's a big machine behind it.
It's grassroots like Canada Action was grassroots, I suspect.
Yeah. But you know what's fascinating? We Take Back Alberta was trending today on Twitter. And I was like, oops, I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
But no, it's important to be informed. It's important to do our homework and then make sure that individuals are informed. It's not to sway the vote one way or another. It is not. The intent that we had is that to make sure that people knew how they functioned, how they operate, what their modus operandi is, what their intentions are, and to make sure that they had all of the information available to them. That's what we were keeping in mind when we wrote it, because the media, and I understand why the media doesn't talk a whole lot about Take Back Alberta, but at the same time, coming this close to the election and seeing all the grasp that Take Back Alberta has on the party and on the constituencies right now, people need to know, because maybe you don't know that your candidate was backed by Take Back Alberta because your candidate sounds reasonable, but they are placing their eggs. They're not putting their eggs in the same basket. They are very careful into putting eggs everywhere, and they're pushing candidates. Like they're pushing a candidate in Cypress Hill Medicine Hat right now. It's going to be interesting what's going to happen there. But, at the end of the day, or, Livingston McLeod seems to be lit these days.
Don't even get started on that.
Hold on. Where's my tinfoil hat? Anyway, I can't find it.
So here's what my question is for Take Back, for you on Take Back Alberta, because it seems like to me, purely opinion.
Yeah.
Their slogan, their raison d'être. That was my best French right there.
Raison d'être.
That's pretty much what I said. You were close. You almost got it right. The reason, their whole thing is to take back Alberta, which I have problems with, because who are you taking it back from? But is it not interchangeable with this nebulous enemy, especially given their strategies? They managed to take over half of the provincial UCP board. They're doing an excellent job of taking over UCP constituency associations. They're doing a very good job of exerting a stunning amount of influence on the current premier and the people who are supporting her. Can't we just call it Take Over Alberta? Wouldn't that be more honest?
Stay tuned. There's another piece coming.
Look at me go.
There's something else in the works. probably we're gonna be finishing this week.
Great
We'll
minds think
see. We'll see. I love working with Dr. Brett. It's great. He's amazing.
Well, speaking of Dr. Bratt, I'm going to use this as a seg. Next Sunday, we're going to be back on Wednesday. We're going to be doing the whole live
Yeah,
thing
right.
again.
I'm on vacation next Sunday.
Well, next Sunday you're on vacation. Next
I am.
Sunday I will be otherwise occupied, I'll say.
I'm sorry.
Shush you. So we're going to be releasing in the same sort of live format that we do these things in. We're going to be releasing a conversation that I had with Dr. Dwayne Bratt earlier this week, where we talk about the new book that he and a few other folks edited called Blue Storm, which is the rise and fall
Of Jason Kenney.
And it's
there's a chapter on the blue truck too.
There is a chapter. You know what, though? I've been working I had to read. Dr. Bratt gave me some homework before I got into the interview. He said, these are the things that you have to read. Make sure that you read them first. And I said, okay, because I'm a good poodle and he scares me just a little bit.
Oh, no,
he's super nice, but I don't want to, like, I have mentioned before that I years ago, I was in one of his poli-sci classes. I did terribly. I was like so unconscious for most of them. And I feel really bad about that. So I don't want to screw it up a second time is really where I'm coming from. So I read the chapters and I've since been working my way through the book. And you know what? I got to say, I was a little excited over today, Sarah. I'm not saying that the breakdown gets a mention in the book, but
I want a paper copy. I need to talk to Dwayne. I want to bring a paper copy with me in Mexico. Not that I'm going to be on vacation. I shouldn't be reading that kind of stuff anyways, but
it's actually a relaxing read. It's not like there's things that I have to read sometimes where I'm like, oh, this is technical and I need to understand it and I need to apply myself.
Heavy shit I was planning on bringing with me, but I think I said poop, heavy poop.
There we go.
I'm really trying, okay? I went from like 150 to 2.
Here's the thing. It's an amazing interview. And
I can't
not only is it really, really good because we talk about the book, we talk about how it's developed, we talk about the current state of Alberta's politics, we talk about Daniel Smith, we maybe get into some predictions, but there's also some very there's some heavy moments in the interview that are impactful, I'll say.
I can't wait to see it.
Sunday, we're gonna release it at 8 on Sunday because we won't be doing a live show, so we'll be releasing it. There will be chat available though, so if you're watching it with us as it's released live on Sunday and all of the standard places, then
maybe I'll join in. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what's gonna happen in the next few weeks. Can I? So I received a email today from the NDP, and it's titled "Alberta is like a calf."
Is what like?
Like a calf, a baby cow.
I'm sorry. Alberta's like a calf. Oh, would you go on? Oh,
I'm not trying to make fun of them. I really am not.
I'll take care of that.
But that one's not a home run. And so I was in Edmonton for a good part of the week. And to that poor fundraising person from the NDP that called me and tried to fundraise for $100 off me. And then I told them no, because I'm waiting to see what more substance they're going to bring into the table, because I haven't seen one policy really yet. And, we don't know how the healthcare plan is going to work and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, okay, I understand. He was like, well, can I explain it to you? I was like, well, no, and it's my maiden name in the NDP database. So then I was like, well, I can't do that for work. And I know what it is. And it was like, no, but please let me explain it to you. I was like, no, really, it's okay. I'm a strategist. I write policy. I know. But then after that, I was like, I can't give money to anyone right now because I'm not satisfied with what I'm seeing out there. And then he was like, yeah, but ma'am, are you tired of the chaos happening? And I had to press mute and bang my head on the desk for
about that word.
2 minutes. And I was like, and he tried to fundraise me for $100. And I was like, I'm so sorry, but no, not today.
Is a
But
calf? Does a calf have to be a boy cow or a girl cow?
I
I
don't
feel like
know.
it's sort of a generic
I
term.
I don't know. We owned the farm. Grandpa had cows, so we should know that.
Because here's my thing. I only have 2 words if Alberta's like a calf. The province of Alberta.
Let me ask my husband: is a calf
Uh,
a baby boy cow or girl?
the things that I Google on the fly. It is the young of a domestic cow. It doesn't appear to be.
Oh, it's like a baby for humans.
It's also part of the leg. Maybe that's what they meant. It's Alberta is.
So no, so they're announcing that they're gonna be hiring, 3,600, healthcare workers. That's great. Where are they coming from?
Okay, here we go. I just looked it up.
Yeah,
A calf is a young cow or bull. So it's not gender specific.
neutral.
It is a gender neutral term, and I just have 2 words for the NDP running on their that theme. Prairie oysters.
Eight.
I'm just saying, if you want to extend the metaphor, we can extend the metaphor.
I was so disappointed when I saw the email today.
Oh
They
boy.
have great opportunities. So let's talk about the 3,600 nurses or whatever they're going to be hiring in the next few, in the future. Where are they going to find them?
I'm still trying to figure like YYC Cowboy announced tonight. He
Oh,
shared an
it's
email
shit show.
that there are changes. That's another one. There are changes coming to the way that EMS drops off patients at the hospital, where it's
March
going to be
15th.
mandatory that it's no more than 45 minutes in the hospital. Now, this gets to be real interesting real quick because it was just earlier in the week that Daniel Smith was talking about. Daniel Smith was talking about we're going to hire these 114 nurses to be able to take over the patients. And when they were asked, have you hired them? They were like, well, we're gonna. So I hope they do it quickly because they've got 9 days.
And they're going to be trained for ER in 9 days? Well, that's funny. I'm just saying, ER nursing is not regular nursing. It's different. It's different. It's very different. It's like ICU nursing. It's a different level. Then, not to denigrate other specialties. That's not what I'm trying to say. But ER is very, very big. It's different.
It is.
But how are you gonna find 3,600 physiotherapists, doctors, hypnotherapists, thalassotherapists, you know, LPNs, nurse practitioners, physician assistants. We don't have a physician assistant program in the province. So, you need to go to Manitoba or Ontario, I believe, to go get accredited. Because I was looking at it, I was like, ooh, I could be a physician assistant, just dump my career, which it's like my midlife crisis right now I'm going through, but I don't want to move to Ontario.
Just
so
get an old convertible. It's delightful.
Yeah.
Makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, but my car's almost a convertible, though, because I have a big glass roof.
It's not the same thing. Sarah, did you know?
What?
I'm going to get in so much trouble. Did you know that, like calves, Alberta needs care? I rarely check my emails, but this was worth checking it for. Okay.
But, like, when I saw the email, I was like, what? Guys, there's so much happening. There's so much you could grasp right now. Run a positive campaign, but assert your position. Please. Please, let's do that. I don't want to hear about cows right now. I got a half of one in my freezer downstairs. I'm good.
Well, nothing's going to capture the Calgary vote in battleground Calgary, like talking about calves.
Well, if they open more Arby's, maybe, which would make Andrew Yule like super happy.
No, nobody wants that.
No,
Nobody
I
wants
don't
that.
like Arby's. No. But no, it's gonna be interesting. Like, now. Oh yeah, can we talk about Scow for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I already made fun of him. I think that was before you joined in, but I already made a bunch of jokes. But what do you got?
Yeah. What the
You know,
fuddle are they
Sarah,
trying to do?
Joseph Scow or Shao, depending on how it's pronounced. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I'm French.
He's like a calf. He needs care. Go on.
So I was talking to a somebody that owns a ranch in southern Alberta yesterday. One of the oldest, biggest ranch in the province. And I was like, it's not a thing. It is absolutely not a thing. They don't have those problems. They don't, they never encountered anything. But the thing is that now what I'm worried about is that, we're introducing gun on bills, a bill on guns, and then after that we're gonna tell that federal agents are not legit to go water testing because Canada Water Act, y'all. And then somebody's gonna get hurt. Like I have questions. I have a lot of questions, and it's almost a dissonance. Like, remember when Jason Kenney used cognitive dissonance to describe a few things the NDP was like this is one of them. Like, we're having issues here. We're there's so like, and funny enough, they're not even using the Sovereignty Act on that. Have you seen? Has anyone noticed how the Sovereignty Act is dead, gone? See you later.
This was one of the
On
fun
a
things
shelf.
at that presser where Mr. Shao just lied. He was asked, "Hey, you've got this legislative schedule." Danielle Smith was very clear with her MLAs and her ministers. You got to come back with suggestions. We want to know how we're going to use the Sovereignty Act. And he was like, "Oh, well, this is. I'm here to give you high level stuff, and I'm not going to talk about that. Good to see your smiling faces, everyone." It was like it was a masterclass in how not to do a press conference.
Um, it was a little disturbing, but that's okay. I've seen worse. But no. So what's fascinating is that in all those laws that she's going to be introducing, and all those bills she's going to be introducing, the Sovereignty Act will not be used. It's fascinating because those are instances where she could claim that she could enact the Alberta Sovereignty Act because it goes with federal jurisdiction, and we want to assert the sovereignty of Alberta and its, independence.
But why use an existing law when you can just write a new one?
Yeah, but fuddle duddle, Nate. We spent a whole legislative session on Bill 1, the Alberta Sovereign within a Unified Canada or something. I don't remember the bill, but we lost like a full month on that. And that's what we're getting. It's a wet, my husband says, just baby cow.
Yeah, it's generic.
So it took him a while to answer because he's washing Gold Rush. That's okay. But, why is she not using it? Why?
Because
I
it would
have
get shut down.
Yeah, but you could try.
But it would get
spend
shut
a lot
down.
of money on
And
it.
then
We spent
right before an election, she would lose her cornerstone piece of legislation, if we want to call it that, and it would not be a great look. I mean, it's the same reason I'm sure why they're writing the bill the way that they're going to be writing the bill, which is going to be so if we get a complaint about this happening in Alberta, which has never actually happened in Alberta, then we'll stomp our feet violently. That'll be there won't be anything that can actually be challenged, because if they write this bill and they say, "Hey, this is the new rule in Alberta," and they enact it, that's when the federal government can say, "Oh, that's cute. Good
Mhm.
try there, Danny. Come back again."
But it's like, when my little Maddie, when she protests about something, she rolls in the ball. When she is not in agreement with something, she doesn't throw a temper tantrum. She rolls in a ball in protest. When we go pick her up from Baba's house, her grandmother, she sees us, she's like, nope, rolls into a little ball. I feel like that's what we've been doing. I don't know. I'm trying to understand why we spent a full legislative session when there's like literally people dying, the healthcare system's on fire, and our nurses and doctors are flocking the province. But hey, that's okay. We'll find 3,600 more healthcare workers, no problem. And then we're not using it. It's going to be put on the shelf.
Sarah,
Yes.
the Sovereignty Act,
Yes.
it's like a calf. It requires care and nurturing to grow. You shouldn't have given me that. We're up to an hour and a half. I'm going to put a lid on it.
Yeah.
Anything you're watching for this week?
Legislature is reconvening tomorrow. It's going to be interesting.
Allegedly.
I feel like I'm not getting best service for my money. I'm not mad at the MLAs. I'm not mad at them because they have zero control over it. But also, I'm looking forward to see if Travis Day is going to announce that he's not going to be running.
I think he is going to announce that.
Yeah, he will announce that he's not going back. Because I don't know if you noticed, but last week when he was doing his budget speech. Sorry, I'm a little rambling tonight because it's been a long week. There was a lot that happened, but he was going through all the budgets he tabled, and I could hear a lot of emotion in his voice. I was like, oh, that's going to be interesting. I think we're losing Travis Staves.
I think
it's going to be interesting.
And
a little sad, even if, a lot of people are not fans of Travis. Remember, Travis is now a progressive, and he's the one pushing back on the premier on a lot of items, and now he's leaving. So I don't know. Maybe they'll put Dan Williams as Minister of Finances. Who knows? I don't know. What do I know? Maybe Jason Steffen while we're at it. Why? He's a chartered accountant.
I think Hildebeest just one comment of the night.
What?
It's on the screen. Doesn't Travis have calves that need care? Thank you for joining in on the fun and games. All right.
Sure.
Gonna wrap it up here. Sarah, we'll see you on a Wednesday before you go on vacation, right?
Yeah. And then I'll pop in on the Wednesday. Depends what time. We'll see.
Perfect. Good stuff.
On the beach?
I mean, you can do what you want. I'm gonna maybe I will make up for the lack of Sarah bombs. But I'm glad you're getting away. I hope you have an amazing vacation. We'll chat more about it on Wednesday. In the meantime, and in between time, here's where I clear the room. I want to say a huge big thank you to everybody who weighed in on the comments tonight, especially that last one from Hildebeest. That was just absolutely perfect. I want to say a big thank you to Politics of Disability for joining in on the Twitter Spaces. We will have the Twitter Spaces up and running again this coming Wednesday. So if anybody wants to share some thoughts on Wednesday, we would absolutely love to hear from you. Thank you, everybody who listened in on the Twitter Spaces as well. As always, if you appreciate the kind of content that we're trying to produce here at The Breakdown, we'd love nothing more than if you considered signing up to be one of our sponsors at our Patreon site at www.patreon.com/TheBreakdownAB, where for just the price of a fancy cup of coffee, you can help us continue to produce the kind of content that we do. We got some good stuff coming up right away. We have, like I said, the conversation with Dr. Dwayne Bratt, we're going to be releasing on Sunday. We're going to be having a conversation with economist Trevor Toom, God willing. He's going to really go in depth with the budget with us. And we got a couple of other things. We used to do these things where we would highlight individual stories and individual situations that weren't necessarily political, but that were definitely impacted by things political. We're going to try to do a couple more of those. I'm really excited about one of them that we're in the process of lining up. I don't want to tip my hand too much on it yet because we have to still schedule it, but it's going to be a good one. if you can't afford, and I know there's lots of people that listen to the show, support the show, that don't have the financial means to be one of our Patreon sponsors. Don't feel bad about that at all. Like and share, as they say, subscribe, smash that subscribe button, as the kids say on the YouTubes. And that's pretty much it for this week. Again, I want to say a huge thank you to everybody for engaging. And I know that there are a lot of people who are feeling super fatigued right now because things are coming so fast and furious. And we're seeing so many changes, and we do have this election coming up that's coming really quickly, and the stakes are really high. I think I mentioned this earlier in the week. I had a conversation with a couple of political scientists at Dr. Bratt's book launch, and hearing some of them say, like, political scientists tend to be the people who are the first ones to say, everybody always says that this election is the most high stakes election ever. Uh, and it's not true. Most elections, it's simply not true. The number of people that I spoke to on Monday night last week who were like, actually, this time when people are saying that, they're not wrong, was really quite telling. So take care of yourselves, do the self-care stuff. It's super important. Find the little victories that you can have in life, because this is a critically important election. And regardless of who wins it, we all have to be prepared to demand a little bit better. We all have to be prepared to say, hey, maybe not that thing on my watch. And we all have to be prepared to remind the Western Standard that they're terrible at their job sometimes. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great evening. Take care of yourselves. And as always, keep the conversation going.